should get water. So we start.
All right, folks, at this time, we're going to call the Common Council work session to order, 4:34 p.m. on March 7th. As typical, this agenda for reviewing items on the regular meeting of the Common Council, opportunity to review departmental reports that have been submitted for this work session, and also just to again reviewing the items for the agenda.
Jack, are you chairing this one?
No, the presiding officer of this Common Council chairs this meeting. Okay. Sure. So again, asking members of the council if they have any questions about the agenda.
Sure.
Questions
Yes,
on the reports?
absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Can
Great.
we just go in order?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
I have one for 741.
Okay, go ahead.
For the parklets, will the concerns for each area, sloping or whatever, are these gonna be addressed individually per restaurant that's doing the parklets?
So the parklets would be out,
They're still gonna be in the street?
right, they'd still be in the street. That's just for the parklets. I'm not sure how the outdoor seating works. That would be, I don't know if they get a special permit from Joe for the seating on the sidewalk areas. I'm not sure how that works.
They do?
They get permit from my office, yeah.
For both the table seating or the sidewalk seating as well as the parking space seating.
That's right.
How are we gonna be able to eliminate some of that with the new downtown arrangement? I see that we ended up using those snow aprons. Kind of took up a lot more space. I know at least one place downtown doesn't have an option for any outside seating that they used to have right at the diner.
Which place is that?
Pizza Bono, looks like.
So he actually has quite a bit from what we kind of redid his and made it so he could actually go down the side of Clinton Street and put tables and chairs too. So he actually has quite a few places to put tables and chairs there where he can get at least what he had out there prior. And we've spoken to him about that.
I thought we were gonna be able to move some of these places out of the street where it's kind of unsafe.
I guess that was my question.
So he's never actually had parklets outside of his
I'm talking
building.
about the other places.
So that's entirely up to you guys. I mean, there are some restaurants that have some more space next to the sidewalk, but I can tell you from the conversations that we've had with restaurants, not only do they want the outdoor seating on the sidewalk, but they also want the parklets as well.
In addition to.
Yes, that's correct. But I've always told them that's not a decision for me to make. That's a decision for you guys to make. I was just out there overseeing construction.
So does that, can I say this? Those requests come through council, will we be approving those individually per, or how?
I guess
Or Joe,
that's my question.
do you approve all of them, or I guess, because I have a similar,
So what I'll tell you is in the past, there was a cap on it. So you would approve them so that when it got to that number, I don't see that there's a cap in it now. So I don't know that you need to approve those or not. You could probably give them blanket approval. What happens is when they come to my office to submit a request, we have to analyze the parking spaces that are taken up. We have to look at their diagram, make sure it's handicap accessible. And by the way, not every place can put tables and chairs on the sidewalk. You also have to verify that there's at least 5 foot clear space for, pedestrian access. So maybe unfairly, some places can have it on the sidewalk and in the street, but not every place has been able to put it on the sidewalk. So that does come through my office. In the past, the council has approved those individually, but my understanding was that because there was a cap, there was a number on it, and so maybe it was 15 or 18 and then 20. And then, so you see that, I don't see that there's a cap on it.
No, I don't see that either.
I don't know that there should be, or shouldn't be either, I'm not saying that.
I don't think that we should have, personally, I just speak personally, I don't think we should have a cap on it. I guess I'm just, always concerned about the safety of parkers in the streets, and, a large part of that construction of Margaret Street, I always felt was meant to, get people off the street for safety concerns and moving on the sidewalk. So, I don't have any, desire to, cap the number. I think that if it's safe and if it's within the parameters of what's acceptable, then I don't have any problem. I don't know how the rest of the council feels. I don't feel the need to say, 20 and that's it, or some arbitrary number.
I guess the hard part here is that we're constrained by the lane width and the parking spaces.
Right.
At the end of the day, Margaret Street from face of building to face of building hasn't changed. Really, I know everyone, and I agree with you 100%. I don't like the parkers on the street. That was worrisome to me. I've expressed that to previous mayors, but that again is a decision the council makes. It used to go through the city engineer's office. But to get them off the street, you need to eliminate parking. There's just not enough width. And that was something during the design phase that they weren't willing to sacrifice. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So really, and you're 100% right. I'm not really keen on it personally as a department head. I think it's a safety issue. But they are wildly popular, and on any day during a nice,
I know.
they're full.
I think maybe we were hoping, I was hoping, that they would be able to be completely, because our sidewalks were, it was wider, that they would be able to eliminate the on-street and it would be on the sidewalk.
Yeah, a lot of places you
That's
can
what
get
my
a couple tables and chairs. The problem
Yeah.
is these restaurants are looking,
full.
they're looking to maximize.
Yeah.
So they don't want just 2 tables and chairs on the sidewalk. They want to have 10 sets of tables and
Oh,
chairs.
understandable.
And we've made improvements, again, that utility strip, the stamp strip, has been improved. In the past, that was very uneven, it was the old paver bricks and everything else, but we still did not give up any parking down there. We put the same amount of parking in the lane width, did we choke them down a little bit?
No, that lane width is, because it's a single lane, it's now 17 and a half feet.
The one way on
But-
Margaret, that section of Margaret,
Yeah.
is actually much wider.
Yes.
But to answer your question, why we can't get them off the street, that is why we can't, because we had to make there had to be a choice made, and the choice was made that we wanted parking.
The other constraint we had too is a lot of the restaurants right now are on the east side of the road. The problem is you never know what's going to go in on the west side of the road. So when we designed that, we put the same amount of sidewalk on both sides of the road. That way, whatever business came in on the west side of the road had the same equal opportunity as the person on the east side of the road. So actually, the reality is I think we lost like a foot on the east side of the road to gain it on the west side of the road. So to make everything even and fair, so everybody had the same amount of equal space.
So when you say equal space, you're talking about sidewalk space?
Yes, correct.
Which we're not talking about equal space on the street.
Correct. Yep.
So
I'm sorry, Counselor, what do you mean by not equal space on the street?
you just said
On
the width of the lanes is what you're saying.
No, I'm talking about the width of the width of the sidewalks from face to curb to building face is approximately the same on both sides of the street.
Right, but the street
Well, between building face to building face,
is,
Margaret Street.
no,
itself.
I mean from curb to curb, when we go out into the street, is it the same amount of space? Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you said.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So it's, yeah,
To clarify, we all recognize that the sidewalk width is the same both on each side, so, that's not changed. The access to the parking spaces are also the same on both sides. That's why we retained the parking, widened the drive lane to 17 feet, and made it one way, as most people know. So folks do have access, and not everybody uses the parking spaces for outdoor dining. Not all restaurants do anyways. There are some restaurants that do leverage it and maximize that space in the parking spot. But all the businesses do have access to it. They want it, not all restaurants mostly. We do limit it to restaurants. We don't say retail shops can,
It's restaurants.
just restaurants. So
Well, I know Mr. Brody put some of his
Yeah.
product out on the sidewalk.
What's
on the
it?
sidewalk.
Sometimes they do, I think, the dress code maybe does that too, once in a while with a permit.
with a permit.
He puts it really close to the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right up against the building.
Not-
As far as parking spaces go, these parklets are in the parking space. By the way, that's part of their requirement, that in a parking space. Those barricades have to be within the parking space stripe, they can't extend out.
In terms of safety, what's the requirement of the barrier, in specific, if a car were to run into a barrier that's out there, what's the requirement for that safety standard?
Yeah, there's a minimum standard for that. I get together with Mike on it sometimes. The typical Jersey barrier that we look at, that's got the bigger foot at the bottom and comes up, they run out of those. So people have come up with other ideas and we've had to assess it. I know we got an evaluation from the city engineer before while he was still here, on some alternative method for that.
Do we need another one, council? Do you think that in terms of addressing the safety concern of parking in the street or parking in a parking spot, do we need to address that concern for safety in terms of what barriers people are using?
I think so.
Because there's I take this hat off and put this hat on, Tracy orders the shorter ones, they're not the taller ones, skinny on top, but they're kind of like the same width all the way up, but they don't come as high, right? But they, we've checked, Tracy's probably checked and said that these appropriate, and like Mike, or like Joe said, sometimes they run out of particular style of barriers. I've heard that there are people that are using water-filled Jersey barriers, but they're filled with water, which, is that safe? Who knows,
So
Yeah,
listen,
I'll tell you in regards to that, that is specifically one the city engineer evaluated when he was still here, was for the co-op.
Yeah.
And he
I don't want
determined
to call
that.
people out, Joe, but thank you.
And he determined that it was, that it met whatever criteria.
Gotcha. So, at the very least, we can provide some initial review on the types of barriers that we feel are safe to use, to protect, patrons. There?
Yeah,
It addresses some of the safety concern anyway.
that really is my only concern, it's just the safety. I think that, the downtown businesses really thrive by having that outdoor, experience. And I think anybody who's dining downtown Plattsburgh really enjoys it. It's just a lot of fun, it's a nice vibe, but I would just want to make sure that, I think any outdoor dining should have Jersey barriers. That's it. For safety. And if you're saying the smaller ones with water-filled base are safe as well, whatever works, but I just want to make sure that people are outside and they're safe.
I just caution that we call anything safe. Okay, if cars going 35 miles an hour, fly one of those right out of there. I had myself witnessed somebody hit a telephone pole with a woman that she had a medical emergency or something. She took the pole clean off. So I wouldn't want us to say we're warranting anything as being safe. It's the safest thing we come up with, but, we haven't done any crash tests or anything, so I would hesitate to say safe or unsafe, just this is what we do. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
No, I think that's a valid point. I think the Jersey style barriers were what was approved initially, even those, impacted 30 miles an hour, like you said, that hasn't been tested. But then any alternative method that has come up, whether the water ones, they're similar in height and size, or these other ones that are smaller, but they're keyed together, they fit on top of each other. They're kind of based on the same impact protection as the Jersey barrier.
I just didn't want us for insurance purposes, warranting something that is safe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's pretty safe.
We could say it's pretty safe.
Well, you don't wanna make any claim that could come back on us.
Yeah, I understand.
Understood. Items, any other items, folks? I know we have some revisions to capital projects that were approved, go to those, I know there's a standard MLD, standard MLD items, including a revision to the schedule, through item 7.45, 7.46, 7.47, 48 are all revisions to an existing capital project.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a conversation
Of
about
course.
this. With 746, 747, and
748.
748.
Of course. I'll have Andrew lead the discussion on these.
Yeah, what is the location of this?
So this is for the Cornelia Street project. So this is the state-funded rehabilitation of Route 3 from basically McDonald's, which is the city limit, down to Prospect. So we have funding from the state to analyze this road, reconstruct, and put in walking and biking facilities. And then we're also analyzing possibility for a roundabout at what we've kind of done the triangle of death where Gangrel's office is. Yeah, it's kind of Walgreens intersection there, it's kind of the center rename. We're gonna rename it. It's bad like that one. So we're analyzing that for a roundabout there. So it's DOT funding. I think it was an 80-20 match grant, and then we also got a Marcia Shelley grant, which took, I think, another 12%. So I think we're on the hook for like 8% of the funding for the project, which is
50,000.
what's out there.
50,000.
Oh, no, this is, I think just the design alone was like 850,000.
So what are we on? We're saying.
So let's start with the supplemental agreement number 1. Supplemental agreement number 1 is for $99,548. So basically what you're looking at is when we started doing the project, we have to do a whole analysis of the corridor required by the state. And when we analyzed this, the state came back and said, we believe there are some historic buildings in this corridor. We want you to further go through and analyze these specific buildings. So a portion of this $99,000 is to pay for a company to come in and look at the historic value of some of these buildings. And then the other portion of it is to do televising of the storm sewer. So as a portion of this project, if we have to move curbs out, we have to redo the storm sewer out on Route 3. We want to televise and camera what's there so we can tell if somebody has tied in private service lines so we can analyze and size the new system properly. So that kind of covers the supplemental agreement number 1. That will be covered by the state. We'll probably pay 8% of that $55,000 or that $99,000 because the rest of it will be funded through the Marcia Shelley and the state funding. Supplemental agreement number 2 is for $50,523.
That's what I thought.
So this one is actually to televise the sanitary sewer. So the state recognizes sanitary sewer and water lines as municipality-owned utilities. So they won't fund those. So we have a sewer line that's out there that we want to do a slip line project on. We have included funding in our capital plan for, I believe, $300,000. So when we do the construction of Cornelia Street, we can also do the slip lining project at the same time. It'll give us a better price through the contractor, and we're already going to be tearing the road up, so it only makes sense to do it then. So this is to televise the sanitary sewer portion of it, so we can do it all at the same time. So we'll get the funding. This will all be the $55,000 we pay for the sanitary sewer funds. None of that will be covered by the Marcia Shelley or the state funds grant.
So that's all on.
Yep, so that $55,000 is all on us for $50,000.
Just to be clear, that does come out of sewer capital reserve.
Yes,
Yeah,
that would be correct.
So it comes out of sewer capital reserve. The capital reserve for sewer is intended for these kind of projects.
What happened happened to this PSAP grant that was supposed to fix that intersection?
So it's actually, if you've noticed, if you've driven down Cornelia Street here and you see plastic bags on new push button heads.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was the PSAP grant.
Beekman.
Yep, so what happened was initially, the PSAP grant was supposed to be for that intersection and Prospect in Cornelia. We ended up putting the project out to bid twice. First time we had no bidder, second time bidder came back with 1.5 million, which was over double what the engineer's estimate was. Third time contractor bidded it, we awarded it, they decided not to do the project, so they rescinded their bid. At that point in time, Michael and I were in talks with the state, and that's where the Upper Cornelia Street project, we started talking to them about it, and they're like, hey, we have funding to redo this, so why don't we'll give you guys the funding for this project, we'll take the PSAP and we'll move it down a couple intersections, because when we did PSAP, we'd actually done a design for 5 different intersections. So we basically took the funding for those 2 intersections, moved it to Beekman and Cornelia and North Captain Street, Cornelia, and they're finishing up with that project here in the spring. So we've got some line striping to do, and then they have to bring the drops in for the wires into the control boxes for the push button crosswalks.
I was wondering if that was gonna.
So PSAP just kind of moved to the east a little bit because we have funding for the rest of Cornelia Street, and all that'll get taken care of when we do the Cornelia Street project.
When, do you have any idea when you would try and accomplish this project?
The Cornelia Street project?
This one?
So tentatively right now, the updated timeline I got from Barton and the Judas was 2026 construction. That is going to hinder upon doing any highway takings or anything that needs to be taken from RK Height, which is the company that does all the highway bound stuff for the state. What we have to look at for highway bounds and what areas will need to be either purchased from a property owner, or if the state decides to do highway takings, that stuff can get into some lengthy timetables. So depending on what happens there will drive when construction happens.
What are the historic buildings that are possibly?
I'm not sure if they're off the top of my head. I have a list of them.
There's a church, there's a church in there.
Yes, but that church isn't very old. Typically, it's a building that's over 50 years old. That's one, I know that's one of the criteria. I'm not sure what the rest of them are. Top of my head. But I think it was to those.
Yeah, I would just be interested. Why so long on this, 2026?
I know.
So this is a big project. So you're looking at, it's a state funded project. So with Margaret Street, we didn't have any state funding. So you don't have to submit everything to the state, get state approvals. With the state, you have certain items that you have to do. So right now, we're doing the draft design report. Draft design report gets submitted to the state approves it. Then the state releases the funding for the highway acquisition. Then you go through the highway acquisition portion. Then you move on to preliminary and final design. Then the state approves the preliminary final design. And then you go to construction documents, they approve all the construction documents, then you put it up to bid. It's a whole drawn out process with the state because they have to make sure that you're spending the money how they intended to be spent, and they go through all the paperwork. Everything has to be reviewed through the state. So that's kind of where a project like Margaret Street doesn't take as long because you're not going through the state, where this project is getting state funded. So you've got to go through all the loopholes.
So if we had used the Margaret Street project and submitted it for similar funding, it would have taken much longer time?
Yes. Yep. That's not to be confused with CHIPS funding.
No, I
Yeah,
understand.
CHIPS funding, we don't have to get
Nope, I-
approvals for that stuff.
That was interesting.
There's a lot to it.
You're going to be very busy.
Yes.
So have they done the preliminary scoping out to make sure that the roundabout is going to be successful?
So they have done a traffic analysis and they have a preliminary design for the roundabout. So all that'll get submitted to the state for the draft. They're working on the draft design report. All of that will get sent to the state. State will review it and give us the go ahead to move on to, basically that's kind of sketch design. So that will give us the go ahead to the preliminary. Any other questions?
No, that answered my questions.
I'm excited. I have to work up that way.
It's much needed, like that's, like we talked about that, the street and the how people can navigate and cannot navigate that.
Oh, yeah.
very, very problematic. Looking through this, there's pretty standard, awarding of contracts. We did have a brief discussion on item 764, which we can continue to have that discussion here, for this work session. As was explained, thank you for the questions, Councilor Gibbs. As we explained in our response, there was a number of, and has been a number of, considerations going into the implementation of a short-term rental registry. This is not something that we've invented. These are registries that we see, being enacted throughout New York State to protect residential housing. The fee schedule, which was the primary thing that I understood was a major concern, or more of a concern than anything else, was again, that was structured based on sample legislation elsewhere. So if there is, look, where nobody's tied to, nobody's tied to that. So, there's a recommendation to change it. Sure, change it. Nobody's, like I said, nobody's really tied to that. Again, it's a privileged opportunity for somebody to rent their home for that opportunity.
Well, I support a fee. This is what I communicated by email. I think the fee is too much. My concern with a fee this high would be owners of short-term rental properties would say, I'm going to register with Airbnb or Vrbo or these other places, and I'm not going to pay it. My recommendation would be that we lower this. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but that's how I feel about it.
Well, it's a $500 upfront and then $250 annually.
$250 a year following, for renewal.
So I went on Airbnb and looked at City of Plattsburgh, and you can rent a place for $100 a night. So that would, annually $250 isn't that much of a stretch.
For a renewal, yeah. So the upfront cost, if I were to put my house on Airbnb or word of mouth or Craigslist or VRBO, I would have to pay the upfront $500 fee for that first year. Subsequent years, correct. I would have to pay $250 a year.
I mean, if you rent your house 3 times a year, you've paid, or 3 times in a year, you've paid for that $250. So to me, it doesn't sound like that much of a stretch.
Yeah, I reviewed the information that you sent us,
Sure.
and, you could lower it a little bit. I wouldn't go less than 400 for that privilege.
It is a privilege.
Making money.
Making money on it.
Yeah, it's not like we're pushing this on some homeowner. They're obviously doing this for profit, and they're obviously getting plenty of rentals, or they wouldn't do it.
Right.
It seemed like pretty much in line with what I saw with the other places. I mean, I would go that to 400, I wouldn't go lower than that. I mean, and subsequent years, if you continue to do this, which I'm assuming some of these people would do it. I think Councilman Net makes a good point. A lot of places charge bed taxes and things like that. So, it is a privilege. Just my thoughts. I'm not trying to.
Just like
I mean, like I said, we were proposing a $500 fee with a $250 annual renewal. Again, if it pleases the council, we can make amendments to that and adjustments to that at the time the item is introduced. But what would be the fee that people would be happy with, I guess?
And that's, if the argument is that it's too expensive, people aren't going to do it, then that argument can be used for any amount, really, or too much of enough.
Sure. In terms of the council, in terms of what the council, the folks that wanted to rent the place. $500 we felt was, obviously the information that we provided was certainly on the upper end of the scale. As pointed out by counselors here, it is a privilege to be able to do that. It's not something that we are obligating the homeowner to pay. So
I would support upping it down to 400.
We can bring that up when it comes up on the agenda.
yeah, do that.
I don't know. I had a question on 7.50. I'm just curious where we're headed with these wells. We're starting on another well. Is the goal to skip,
Yeah, sure. 750, production one, too.
Okay, so the plan is to, in general, is to construct a well field out around Mead Reservoir. Right now, we've got one production well installed that we're in the process of connecting into the existing raw water transmission line so we can send that water to the filtration plant and permanently make it part of our water supply portfolio. This work here is for hydrogeologic work that's needed for the second production well. Right now, there's a number of test wells out around Mead.
well, I guess I'll save you some breath. My
I'll
question
talk
was,
forever on the
where
water.
are we headed? Are we trying to move towards all the water for the city going to be well water? Is this a backup? Where is the?
Okay, all right, I understand. So let me back up a little. We've got what I call 3 separate and distinct sources of supply in our portfolio.
Oh, no.
Sounds great on great.
Wow.
All right.
You're making a portfolio.
We're getting all these millions of dollars. So Mead Reservoir is recharged by a separate and distinct watershed from the Westbrook reservoirs. So Mead watershed is one separate and distinct source of water. The Westbrook watershed is another separate and distinct source. We can also take water out of the Saranac River. So that's 3 different sources that we can take water from. And that's really important when it comes to reliability. Have multiple sources of water, redundancy, all that kind of stuff. Mead Dam has structural concerns that we've been trying to deal with for about 15 years. So we've been putting in a well field to what we say supplement or replace Mead as a source of water. Right now, we're getting a lot of grant money to do that. There's no grant money or financing available to rebuild dams right now. And it's a lot less expensive to put in wells than it is to rebuild or replace a dam. So the well field is to supplement or replace the Mead Reservoir. Once the well field's in, we'll then make a determination about what the future of Mead Dam and Reservoir is. It'd be great if all of a sudden funding appeared later on, and maybe we could rebuild the dam in a way that was affordable and made sense. If that kind of funding does not materialize, then Mead may become what's called decommissioned, and it may just disappear and cease to be a source of water, but will have been replaced by the well field.
Yeah, well, my concern was, that, we have use electric here. Well water has minerals in it, and
Just gonna say that.
having gone from surface water to well water in Champlain, that can cause a lot of problems. I remember the first year we had the well water, I had to replace every fixture in my house. An electric water heater would,
Is that a concern? How do you ameliorate that?
we may have to treat
So
it.
the water quality testing has been done so far. It doesn't show that the water is excessively hard or the presence of high levels of other minerals. What it does, though, is having this groundwater source is it can give us the best of both worlds. Surface water, like the Mead Reservoir or the Westbrook reservoirs, is typically softer than you want it to be. Sometimes well water can be harder. So depending on what's actually happening in a reservoir at a given point in the year versus what the water quality is like in the wells, we can actually blend
Okay,
two
that's
types
what I
of
was
sources.
getting at. Are we looking at a blended system versus all well water?
You could put it that way. So let's say Mead Reservoir as a surface water source ceases to exist and we just have wells around Mead. We'll still have the Westbrook Reservoir, which is surface water. And we'll still have the Saranac River if we need it. So you could call it a blended source. I tend to use the terminology, there's a possibility for blending to get the exact type of raw water that we want going to the water treatment plant. It might be during times of year when the reservoirs sometimes turn over and the reservoir quality isn't as good as it normally is. You might just use well water. If we've had a lot of rain in a given year and the reservoirs are full, we might decide not to use the wells and just rely on the surface water, or we could blend the two of them. So bottom line is we'll have a lot of flexibility in the future, more than we have now.
And people aren't gonna have to buy water softeners.
We don't want to be in a position where all of a sudden the water quality has changed and getting the type of situation that you're talking about, where the water's a lot harder than people are used to seeing, and all of a sudden water softeners or water heaters are fouling. But again, we'll have the ability to blend two different types of water to make sure that doesn't happen.
We'll find out when they start drawing water, I guess.
Well, you said it was tested, right?
Yes.
Water.
Now, water quality can change over time. It changes in the reservoirs, can change in the groundwater. You don't typically see groundwater quality change as quickly as a surface water source would, but it's not totally out of the question.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Is there anything else on the agenda that the council, any agenda items that the council would like to review? I know that there was a question about, item, 762, which I would like to have an executive session to talk about, so we're talking about matters of employment. We can wait till, got about 20 minutes left to the work session. We'd like to have it during the work session so we can continue through the, if possible, we'd like to have it during the work session so we can continue through the regular agenda. But there's also, sorry, council, but there also might be some questions on the reports as well, which I don't want to undermine.
Creative crosswalk, second time. Did I not see a picture of this?
It was in the thing.
What's the warrant?
I don't know that you actually saw the detailed plan. The PDF that I included, I thought had this, but,
It did, yeah, I saw it.
It did, I didn't.
Okay, I brought extra copies just in case, and I'm happy to pass them around. So this is the proposal, and, it's been reviewed by the Regional Traffic Safety and DPW. This was provided by the, art students and, collaborated with Clayton County Health Department.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there's only one of the two crosswalks that's gonna have that?
Correct. It would be the western side. The eastern side has a crossing guard already. So this would help alleviate the safety issues with the western crosswalk.
I have to just make one comment on that, and that is, because I do see, on the crosswalk, I do see that in action all the time. It is a very dangerous intersection, and I have to compliment the crossing guard there. You know, he does a very good job for what he's up against. You know, he's got traffic coming at you from four directions. There's only 3 crossing places, but the people drive in to drop the kids off, and then there's another big flow of people coming out there. And I gotta say, he got his hands full with it.
Absolutely.
I wanna,
If traffic flows to be looked at, that would be a good place to look at traffic flow. This is what can be done.
We are, so last year, if y'all remember, we did a traffic study or traffic analysis of Broad Street.
Right.
which includes that intersection all the way up to
Beekman?
Beacon? The traffic study?
Yes.
Beacon,
Yes.
yes. We're in the final, well, we've been working with the consultant to analyze those numbers and to make some recommendations on traffic changes or traffic pattern changes to help alleviate the major concern of pedestrian traffic, bike traffic, school traffic, business traffic on that, major boulevard. There is something in the works to make a recommendation for lowering the traffic, lowering safety concerns. On that boulevard. Any questions about reports? We got about 15 minutes. Pretty standard reports that are provided to council. If there aren't any questions, I would like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss appointment of a particular person.
Make that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Manette, second by Councilor Vaughn, all in favor?
Aye.
We're now in executive session. We'll move the whole council chambers, please.
Like, I didn't see it. Jeez, no.
So make sure somebody open the door.
Sometimes it's hard. How's Joe doing? I was thinking we're gonna have one question about how you're going. That's a view, that's your call.
The season was rough last year.
Thank you folks for coming back from executive session. Motion to executive session, please. Councilor Gibbs, second. Councilor Manette, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn the work session. Motion by Councilor Avery, second Councilor Gibbs, all in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
I just have to start